you put enough pressure on something, something has to give, something has to crack. Well, we all know that the elephant in the room, as you will hear it described by an Irish senator here, cannot be ignored. Mass immigration that is crippling and destroying Ireland. Period. There's no getting away from it. She brings up a good point, you're going to hear it in a minute, that this can't be ignored. Because if this can't be ignored, it will be catastrophic for Ireland. Period. So the government have also came out. Maybe it's got something to do with what happened at the weekend, or a culmination of events. But they're also saying we need to get this immigration business sorted out. We need to get this asylum seeker business sorted out. Now, I don't put any faith whatsoever in what the government says. However, they are addressing it more and more frequently and seem to have a little bit of an urgency. Dare I say it, they seem to be a little perturbed about it also. So let's look at some video clips. First one of which here is Senator Sharon Keogan. She is talking about this, and she references the Dublin protest at the weekend, which very, very few people in government have done. In fact, almost none of them have done, at least none of them have done it in a positive light. So let's hear what she has to say here.
In this chamber, there's a rising issue that is dominating Irish society. Inside this chamber, we hear nothing about it. Out there in the bars, in the taxis and on the streets, it's all people are talking about. Yet in here, on the benches of the Shannon or the Dáil, we hear absolutely nothing. The issue is, of course, immigration. And I speak of the gigantic national rally that took place last Saturday, where up to 20,000 people marched through Dublin to oppose the government's suicidal open border policy.
That's very strong language, to oppose the government's suicidal open border policy. She talks about numbers. She doesn't lowball it like RTE and most of the mainstream legacy sources have, estimating around about 5,000 people. She's talking about 20,000. I'm telling you, it was between 50 and 100,000 easily. But she's acknowledging it, and she's also acknowledging the fact that this is this hot topic of discussion everywhere apart from in the government.
Despite the numbers, we have still heard nothing about it. I've warned previously that if we in these houses do not address immigration, others will. However, our ruling parties still seem intent on ignoring it, hoping it goes away. RTE have followed this approach, perhaps the only area in which they seem to have a good relationship with their government founders at the moment. When RTE did pay attention, they focused on the counter-protest, which was organised by the taxpayers-funded NGOs, who tell Irish taxpayers that any problems they may have with mass uncontrolled migration are only imagined.
Talking about RTE being a government-founded and backed propaganda arm, talking about NGOs. Money being funded into counter-protesters to gaslight people into thinking that everything's actually all right. Your problems are imagined, they're not real. Very interesting. Of course, it's just talk, but it's interesting to see where the talk is being spoken from in this case.
Have not proved much better. In fact, many of them threw their lot in with the vastly outnumbered counter-protesters. They waved banners saying, "We are having a housing crisis, not an immigration crisis." It is simply delusional to think that you can separate the immigration crisis from the housing crisis, or from the law and order crisis, the healthcare crisis, the immigration crisis, and so many others. Politicians and elites are prone to delusions, but luckily the Irish people are not. You can keep ignoring them, but their numbers will only keep growing.
Wow. Politicians and elites are prone to their own delusions. She talks about the various crises, the immigration crisis, the housing crisis, the healthcare crisis, the law and order crisis. I mean, what more damning statement could actually be made on the state of play today? So fair play to her for speaking up in such a way on this occasion. Okay, so It doesn't end there. There's a report that has came out to do with the government's desire to speed up decision making when it comes to asylum seeking refugees, whether they can stay in the country, whether they can be removed. But again, a lot of talk what will actually be done about this. And the core takeaway from this clip that you're about to see is they want to fast track things, the decision making process, down to around 3 months, 3 to 6 months. It shouldn't take 3 to 6 months. You know, that's not a win. It needs to be immediate, or as close to immediate as you can be. Dropping it from 2 to 3 years to 3 to 6 months, you know, it's pie in the sky. But let's hear what they say.
To be updated in what the government is saying is the most significant reform in decades. Well, ministers have today agreed to a set of legal deadlines of 3 months for most asylum seekers to be given refugee status or to be turned away. Our political correspondent Gavin Riley is at Leinster House for us this lunchtime and joins us now. So Gavin, how's it going to work?
A combination of two ways, Colette. First is the upsizing of the number of staff that work in the International Protection Office. That has already been increased in recent months, and that is set to be scaled up even further. But secondly, and more novelly in what Jim...
So more staff are going to be employed, more staff. Instead of employing more staff to mull over issues that could take 3 months, why not just empower the staff that are there to make fast, snap decisions instead of stretching them out over periods of time?
Callahan is announcing today is that there's going to be some changes to procedure, particularly around appeals, because that is often where a lot of bottlenecks in the asylum system appear to emerge. Somebody who might, in the first instance, have an asylum application rejected might be entitled to lodge an appeal, but that appeal by default is heard orally. That in itself also takes months. And then, although there is quite a large number of people who are successful on appeal, the whole process can ultimately take so long that it creates backlogs elsewhere in the system. So, Jim O'Callaghan says it is fair for everybody if the process is expedited.
If we have it in law that there is a requirement that we have to have the process on appeal.
Big Jim O'Callaghan, eh? Man who really, God bless him. You know, what can I say?
Determined within 3 months, well, that simply is going to have to happen. One of the measures I'm introducing, which is evident in Head 69 of the Heads of Bill that are published today, is that I will be expediting the process of appeal. The opportunity to have an oral hearing on appeal level will not be the de facto position, which it is at present. An appeal hearing will only happen in exceptional circumstances.
There's also one other procedural change being made as part of these overall reforms, which are part of Ireland's adoption of the EU Migration and Asylum Pact, and they're due to take effect by June of next year. And that is the fact that now some deportation orders and some rejections of asylum will not need to be authorised directly by the Minister, but can actually be authorised by the officials themselves.
And herein lies the problem. Okay, you come to another country, you present yourself somewhere. You can't identify yourself. No one can ascertain who you are. Can you speak English? Whatever. How many countries did you skip over before you came to Ireland? Ministerial decisions, appeals processes, talking about bottlenecks. Nowhere else. If you go east, go into an African country, for example, and turn up at the border, especially if you come in through an airport, if you can't present any documentation or you don't have a visa, you're out of there instantly. Whereas we have all this faffing around here in Ireland, and now they're trying to celebrate this as some kind of win by saying they're reducing the time down to 3 months.
Assessing a claim. In other words, where previously something would have to be sent up the food chain for the Minister to sign off on, in future now they will be able to be signed off by the officials themselves without needing ministerial oversight. But all of this has raised some concern among opposition parties, particularly those who worry that sometimes the sensitivities of some cases might be overlooked if there is an acute legal deadline on processing claims.
What he's planning on bringing to Cabinet today and the reports that were in the media today.
Look at this crew, motley crew here. Social Democrats, I believe. Banging on. He's going to bang on now about how it's a nasty system. It's not nice having people waiting for up to 3 months. Never mind the fact that they're getting free everything when they're coming here. They had to pay to get themselves trafficked across land and sea in many cases with no identity. Because if they had identity, they could just jump on a flight and come here directly. But no, they can't do that. Nothing cruel about it.
To give the impression of a very sweeping change to our asylum processes. Look, all of us can absolutely accept that we need an asylum process that is far more efficient, but that doesn't mean that we should have one that has almost cruelty built into it. I mean, the idea that we can now take decision times down to 3 months, where previously they'd been up to 2 and 3 years with just a potential for another 3-month review. I mean, that seems to me that's something that's going to be unduly harsh. Asylum is complex.
Unduly harsh. Asylum is complex. It's a really cruel thing. Is it cruel? Is it cruel? They're getting 3 months to be assessed with a possible extension of 3 months. He thinks that's cruel and unduly harsh. How many will he be putting up in his house in the meantime? Will he be throwing the doors open for his residents to say, it's cruel and harsh, come on in with me? Talk. But anyway, the point of the matter is, I believe the cracks are appearing in the walls and in the plaster. The pressure is on the dam, which must surely break. Thank you all for watching these videos, for subscribing to the channel for those that have. For those that haven't, hit the subscription button. And also, consider becoming a channel member. Every Wednesday, today being Wednesday, we have a question and answer session for channel members. You get to leave questions, direct questions or issues for me to address in the members videos, and they're made available every Wednesday night. So if you haven't already done that, consider that also joining the channel and become a channel member for no risk, no reward media. And for now, I'm Rick Munn, over and out.